Great effort, team. Let's push through, maintain quality, and meet the deadline. Let's get started. The Steel in Her Womb. The story of Zanele Khumalo. Welcome to African Gospel Tales, where truth meets courage and stories light the soul. Today, we bring you the powerful journey of a woman who defied not just professional odds, but the very prejudice rooted in the hearts of those who wore white coats and held titles. What happens when a brilliant mind is cloaked in black skin, and a pregnant belly becomes the reason to underestimate divine design? This is the story of Zanele Khumalo, engineer, mother, believer. She didn't just build bridges on blueprints. She built them between hearts and truth. Zanele Khumalo was 34, brilliant, and 7 months pregnant. Her belly rounded like the sun rising over Johannesburg. She wore it with pride, but also with weight. Not just the weight of life inside her, but the judgment of the world around her. A senior structural engineer at a top firm, Zanele had climbed the ranks on pure skill. Her calculations were precise, her designs admired, but her presence in the room still questioned. She was the only black woman in her department, and every morning, as she stepped into the glass-paneled skyscraper of Orion and Company, she carried not just a laptop, but a shield made of poise, prayer, and persistence. "Ah, the maternity mascot is here," whispered one colleague as she walked past. "Does she even climb scaffolding anymore?" Another muttered. Zanele heard it. She always did. But she smiled. She knew who she was, and more importantly, whose she was. The sun broke through Johannesburg's skyline like molten gold pouring through gray steel. Sounds of jackhammers, grinding machines, and workers' chatter filled the air like an unending rhythm. Birds circled above as if confused by the steel replacing trees. But at the center of it all, helmeted, determined, and dressed in a neon orange vest, stood Zanele Khumalo. She wasn't just a construction engineer. She was a pregnant woman carrying both a child and a dream, 9 months into both. With each footstep on the gravel, she walked not only through a job site but through prejudice, pressure, and prayers whispered through pain. Dust swirled around her boots. The wind tugged gently at her high-visibility jacket. She carried a tablet in one hand, and in the other a thermos of lukewarm rooibos tea. A crucifix dangled from her neck, silver, worn, but defiant. It bounced with each step like a heartbeat of faith. "Morning, ma'am," murmured Sifo, one of the younger site workers. His smile was shy, but respectful. He offered a salute with his hard hat. "Morning, Sifo," Zanele said with a nod, her eyes already scanning the scaffolding that had been reported misaligned yesterday. Her belly pressed firmly against her overalls. Sweat purled at her temples, though the air was still cool. But she didn't complain. She was used to discomfort. What bothered her more than the weight of pregnancy was the weight of being ignored. Today, like every day, she had come in early, earlier than most of the men she supervised. She double-checked blueprints, safety logs, and tension cable alignment. And yet, when the lead contractor arrived, Mr. Jacques Venter, he barely acknowledged her. Tall, crisp, and wearing a frown like it was sewn into his cheeks, Jacques stepped onto the site like a king surveying a colony. "Is the site ready for inspection, Khumalo?" he asked, without even looking her in the eye. Zanele lifted her chin. "Yes, sir. We corrected the steel frame variance on the western side. The new concrete support measurements meet the standards." Jacques sighed, as if she'd overstepped. "I'll confirm that myself." Then, under his breath, just loud enough, 9 months pregnant and still parading around here like she's one of us. Zanele heard it. She always heard it. But today, instead of answering with words, she tightened her grip on the blueprint tube in her hand and turned away. Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. What Jacques didn't know was that this morning she had whispered Psalm 91 over herself. What Jacques didn't see was the angel assigned to walk beside her, even in her silence. Because some battles aren't won with comebacks. They're won with consistency. She walked on, with steel in her spirit and life in her womb. The office where Zanele was to meet her supervisor was on the 5th floor, a part of the building nicknamed the White Wing. It earned the name not just because of the sterile walls and glass partitions, but also because, for years, only white professionals had desks there. As Zanele waited for the elevator, she caught her reflection in the polished chrome doors, a brown face framed by a navy headscarf, full lips pressed into a determined line. Her shoulders were square, but inside nerves fluttered. The elevator dinged. She stepped in, sharing the ride with two older white men in suits who barely acknowledged her. One adjusted his tie and said to the other, "Another diversity tick box, probably." They didn't whisper. They didn't have to. Zanele said nothing, her fingers clenched around the folder in her hand, a proposal she had spent weeks perfecting, ready to present at the Monday design review. The 5th floor was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that hummed with unseen eyes. She walked toward the receptionist who glanced up briefly before lowering her gaze back to the screen. "Zanele Khumalo. Here for a 10 a.m. with Mr. Van Dyke." The receptionist didn't smile. "Take a seat." There was no welcome. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Zanele watched as other engineers, white, all of them, were greeted, ushered in, or waved at. Her stomach twisted, her bladder was full, her baby kicked, but she remained. At 10:42 a.m., the door finally opened. A tall, balding man with icy eyes stepped out. He scanned the room. His gaze landed on Zanele and stayed there, unblinking. "You're Khumalo?" "Yes, sir." He looked her up and down, at the belly, at the headscarf, at the hope standing tall despite everything. "Come," he said, and turned. Zanele followed, into a room that felt more like a courtroom than a workspace. The walls were glass, but the transparency was a lie. Judgment happened here without words. Mr. Van Dyke didn't offer her a seat. She took one anyway. He sat across from her, tapping her file with 2 fingers. "You were supposed to submit this by Friday." "I did," Zanele replied evenly. "I emailed it Thursday morning. I have the sent confirmation." He shrugged, uninterested. "I didn't see it. That's all that matters." Zanele opened her mouth but stopped. She would not beg, not today. "I reviewed your preliminary drafts," he continued. "Decent, but you'll need to toughen up. This field isn't gentle." She wanted to say, "Neither is childbirth," but bit her tongue. Then came the warning shot. "Pregnancy is no excuse for delays. If you're not up to the demands, I suggest you request reassignment, perhaps to admin or clerical support, less demanding." Zanele's back straightened. "I am not requesting reassignment," she said. "I'm here to build bridges, not fetch coffee." A long silence, then a smirk. "We'll see." The next morning, Zanele sat in the 3rd-floor conference room of Njenga Engineering. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long rectangular beams across the polished wood table. A dozen white men and 1 woman, her, sat in silence as the managing director droned on about the company's upcoming bridge project in Mpumalanga. She was the only one who had her drawings marked in red, every line double-checked, every number triple-verified. No one else's work was dissected with such precision. Her designs were flawless, mathematically, structurally, and ethically, but their eyes always found fault in her presence. Across the table, Heinrich, a junior engineer who had joined just 3 months ago, interrupted the director. "I actually had a suggestion regarding the support beams." Zanele leaned forward. "Your calculation would compromise the truss integrity," she said, gently but firmly. Heinrich blinked. "I was just suggesting—" "No, Heinrich," the director cut in. "Let her speak." That alone made the room go quiet. For the first time, Zanele outlined the flaw in Heinrich's math, drew out the potential collapse scenario on the whiteboard, and reasserted the original values from her own blueprints. The silence remained. The managing director finally cleared his throat. "Good. We'll proceed with Zanele's draft. Moving on." But as the meeting ended, Heinrich whispered near the doorway to another engineer, just loud enough for her to hear. Lucky for her, she can do math. Pity about the skin. Zanele didn't flinch. She walked past them, head high, shoulders strong. Yet inside, her womb tightened again. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, from fire. A fire that whispered, "You were born to build, not just bridges, but new ways of being seen." That evening she drove home quietly, the engine humming beneath her. At a red traffic light, she looked in the mirror. Her face looked tired, but her eyes carried prophecy. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for every daughter yet to dream. Zanele sat stiffly at her workstation, her back straighter than usual, eyes locked on her monitor as though the screen held the key to her escape. Around her, the newsroom buzzed with its usual energy, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, and journalists hustling in and out of meetings. But for Zanele, everything sounded distant, like echoes through a thick fog. Her ears still rang with Johan's voice from earlier, and her cheeks flushed when she recalled the way his laughter had spread among the others. She tried to concentrate on the story she was editing, an exposé on housing injustices in Soweto, but her thoughts kept returning to the incident that morning. Why had Johan assumed she couldn't understand journalistic ethics? Why had he joked about her surprising articulation? And why had no one in the room spoken up? As she reached for her teacup, her phone buzzed. A message from Mandla. "You good?" I saw his nonsense. "Want to talk later?" She smiled faintly. At least someone had noticed. Later that afternoon, as the sun slanted into the newsroom through high windows, Zanele was called into the editor-in-chief's office. The summons was terse, formal. She took a deep breath, adjusted her blouse, and walked in. The editor, Ms. Fredericks, sat behind her glass desk, eyes unreadable behind gold-rimmed glasses. "Zanele," she began, motioning for her to sit. "I've received a complaint. Johan says you've created a hostile work environment. He mentioned insubordination and unprofessional behavior." Zanele blinked. "Excuse me? I'm asking for your side." Zanele's voice was calm, but her fingers gripped her file tightly. "All I did was assert that his comments were inappropriate and racially insensitive. He joked about my unusual fluency in English, then undermined my pitch in front of the team." Frederick sighed. "Zanele, I know you've worked hard here, and I personally admire your reporting. But Johan is experienced. He has tenure." Zanele looked her straight in the eye. "So do microaggressions, and they cause damage no promotion can fix." There was silence. Then Fredericks leaned back and folded her arms. "We'll investigate further. In the meantime, try not to escalate things." Zanele left the office, her hands shaking. She was tired, so very tired, but she wasn't broken. That night she cried, not because she was weak, but because she had held it in too long. Mandla invited her out the next day. They met at a small cafe run by an old woman who greeted Zanele like a daughter. "Breathe, Zanele," Mandla said, passing her a steaming cup of ginger tea. "I don't want to fight anymore," she admitted. "I just want to do my job without constantly proving I belong." "And you will," Mandla said. "But you were never just working for a paycheck. You were sent here with a purpose." He opened his notebook. Inside were names, colleagues, former interns, black staff members who had quietly left the newsroom over the years, all victims of the same silent culture. Zanele stared at the list, then whispered, "Let's tell the real story." Together, they began collecting testimonies, data, past incident reports. It wasn't just about Johan anymore. It was about the system that allowed Johan to flourish. Within weeks, the internal review had turned into a formal inquiry. HR was forced to open past case files. Anonymous complaints began flooding in. And then, the board took notice. One morning, Johan came to work and found his desk cleared. He was suspended pending investigation. Zanele stood by the hallway window, watching the city below. She didn't cheer. She prayed. The months that followed were transformative. The newsroom began holding diversity workshops. Policies were rewritten. Anonymous reporting channels were launched. Ms. Fredericks invited Zanele to help lead the newsroom's new inclusion committee. She declined. Instead, she asked for something else. A column every week. The request was approved. Her first column? Titled, "Steel in Her Womb." Zanele Khumalo, the brave expectant mother. Let your dignity speak louder than the prejudice around you. Lesson: never let your profession, gender, or color make you feel lesser. Your presence is powerful. God's eyes are on the unseen, and his justice arrives right on time. Takeaway: speak truth even when your voice trembles. Never accept silence as the price of survival. Mr. Jan Laubser, the racist boss. Prejudice may wear a tie and hold a title, but it cannot outrun truth. Lesson: no position is high enough to hide a wicked heart forever. Takeaway: power without compassion is noise in God's ears. One day, every action must answer before justice, both earthly and divine. Mrs. Mapule, the silent administrator. When you choose silence in the face of oppression, you've taken a side. Lesson: neutrality in injustice is complicity. Speak up. Takeaway: fear may whisper excuses, but courage is what changes policy and protects others. Dr. Nandi, the medical ally. You don't need a title to protect someone, you just need a heart. Lesson: allies are needed not just in protests, but in places of protocol. Takeaway: be the bridge. Be the one who opens doors others are locked out of. Zanele's husband, Mandla. Stand beside her, speak for her, but above all, believe in her. Lesson: a good man uplifts, not overpowers. Takeaway: when men honor women, families heal, communities rise. Bible verse inspiration, Psalm 9, verse 9. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Final moral message: racism in professionalism is not always loud, but it's always dangerous. This story is a call to speak up, stand firm, and never accept disrespect as normal. Every person matters, and every life, born or unborn, is sacred. Zanele's story isn't just about fighting workplace prejudice. It's about everyday courage, about knowing who you are and standing tall, even when others look down on you. In life, you will face people who doubt your abilities. They may whisper behind your back or openly question your place at the table. But you must remember this: your value isn't decided by their words, it's revealed by your actions. Show up, speak up wisely, work hard, and never let the weight of judgment stop you from carrying your dreams. Sometimes the strongest people are not those who shout the loudest, but those who keep moving forward with quiet confidence and undeniable excellence. And here's a simple truth for your daily life: respect is not demanded, it's cultivated. Through every decision, every response, every moment of grace. So today, ask yourself, are you building bridges for others or walls to hide behind? Are you allowing others to define you, or are you defining your own story? Remember, one day, your journey might be the reason someone else refuses to quit. Thank you for watching this story on African Gospel Tales. If this story touched your heart or made you reflect, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Like, comment, and share so more people can hear stories that inspire courage, dignity, and truth. Join us for more powerful tales that move beyond words and into action. Until next time, stay bold, stay kind, and always walk with purpose.